All right, guys. So it is draft week. And actually, as I'm recording this video, we are now 2 days away from the NFL draft. And as a Bears fan, man, I could not be more excited. I am itching like a crackhead for this draft day to come already and for us to see who we're going to draft. And man, this is going to be such a unpredictable kind of draft. I know Ryan Poles already said that too in today's interview that he had, or press conference, I believe. But dude, I mean, we're talking about a draft that is very top heavy. Obviously, you have guys like Abdul Carter, Travis Hunter, Cameron Ward, who's going to pretty much go first overall. But for today, I'm not going to do a mock draft just off the first round. I'm actually just going to stick with the Bears. And it's surprising that I actually haven't done this all off season, even though I've done many mock drafts on my own for whatever reason. But I figured I might as well just do it for the video, have it recorded and post it so I can kind of maybe look back on in the coming years, I guess, and kind of see where we're at as a franchise. Hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years, we're competing for a Super Bowl or have won one. That would be amazing for the Bears fan base and just my mental health in general. But going ahead right here, I'm using NFL Mock Draft Database Simulator, and we are going to actually make our first big trade. And I'm only doing this just because I know for a fact that this is how this mock draft website, that's how you know I've been on this website way too often. But we're going to go ahead and trade up. Just assume in this case that we're at pick 5, but we're going to go ahead and trade up to pick number 6, and we're going to steal Ashton Jeanty away from the Raiders. And there's a few reasons why I believe this would be the best case scenario for the Bears. For one, obviously you're getting the guy that can unlock your offense, and Ben Johnson, you've seen what he's done with guys like Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I don't see that happening with DeAndre Swift or really any other running back in this class. I don't think we're going to be in line to select Omarion Hampton unless we trade back from 10. And I don't think that's going to happen either because this draft is so top heavy. So I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think guys like Henderson and Judkins and Caleb Johnson, I don't think they're going to have the same effect as an Ashton Jeanty. But Ashton Jeanty, man, is the guy that can sort of take your offense to the next level and most importantly, help Caleb Williams develop. Having a good run game, just like it helped Jared Goff revitalize his career, will help Caleb be able to develop properly and just have a great team in general and just have a great year and get us to compete. So what would it take for the Bears to trade up from 10 to 6? I would honestly think that I don't think it's going to take just this. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I think it's going to take this right here, pick 72, and I believe DeAndre Swift as well is going to be thrown in that trade package. And if I had to kind of guess what that would be, and I know people are going to think this is way too little for him, but you're talking about a team that would most likely have to take on his contract as well. I would say that it would be like a 2026 fifth rounder or a sixth rounder. That would be sort of the equivalent. Now, obviously on this website, I can't make player trades, but this is kind of where I'm going to value, let's just say DeAndre Swift. So just pretend that this 2026 fifth rounder is DeAndre Swift. I don't think it's going to be worth any of these picks. Maybe you could possibly make the argument that the Bears could snatch up one of these fifth or sixth round picks. They're not really that important. It's very rare that a player from the fifth or sixth round or later round ends up being a good player. Very rare. More often than not, that player is going to be like a special teams player. So this is the draft, or this is the trade that I think is going to happen for the Chicago Bears here. And if we start the draft right here, just as predicted, this would be crazy if Abdul Carter was actually available. Ignore that because honestly, a lot of these mock draft that I do on this website have Abdul Carter falling to 10, and in no universe is that going to happen. So realistically here, we're trading up for Ashton Jeanty. Also, Cam Ward is not going to be available at that pick either. That makes no sense. And here's also the other reason why I think it would be beneficial to trade up. Trade up for Jeanty. People always talk about, let me get out of this real quick. People talk about this right here. The gap between 41 and 148, obviously 107 picks, is a lot of picks, especially when you're picking from the early second round all the way into the fifth round. You don't have any picks in the third and fourth round from that spot on. And obviously in that scenario, it becomes tough because you obviously want picks in that little spot right there. But for me, what I think ends up happening on draft night, which, by the way, Tate Ratledge at pick 38, it's kind of reach, but whoever. What I think ends up happening on draft night, and what usually happens in general, is that a first-round talent ends up falling to the second round, into the early second round. We've seen it happen last year with guys like Johnny Newton and Cooper DeJean, who were both consensus mid to late first round picks, and both of them fell out of the first round. We've seen guys like Will Levis, who were projected to go in the first round, fall all the way to the second round, I believe. You got guys like Malik Willis, who was talked about as a top 10 pick at one point, all the way to the third round. You got guys like Brian Branch, who fell to pick 45, a guy that could have gone in the first round as well. I think it happens this year as well. I don't think it looks like this with Kenneth Grant and James Pierce available and Walter Nolan. I mean, an act of God himself would literally have to come down from heaven and be a Bears fan, which I would not absolutely mind at all. This would be amazing, but I want to keep this as realistic as possible. I think in this scenario, you're looking at guys more likely than not are going to be available here, are going to be guys like Nick Scorton. If you want to look at some of the edge rushers, I don't think James Pierce Jr. is available. I'm going to be realistic here because I could easily make this Kenneth Grant and James Pierce as a pick, and I just won the draft no matter what. But for here, I am going to go with a guy that is more likely to be available at pick 39. Now, I think he honestly goes to the Lions or to the Commanders, but Nick Scorton is a guy that I am very, very high on. He should be a first-round pick. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he gets picked in the first round. I would love him at pick 39. But this is the scenario that I'm talking about for the Bears here. You've got pick 41. Obviously, you don't have picks for another 107 picks. One of two things could happen here in the NFL draft. Either one, there's another guy, just like how I said last year, there were two first-round, consensus first-round picks that fell to the second, and Johnny Newton and Cooper DeJean. That could happen once again here, and you end up getting that guy at pick 41. Let's just say that's a James Pierce Jr. or a Kenneth Grant, or in this case, Walter Nolan. That'd be amazing. Most likely than not, more likely than not, that's not going to happen. So I think in this case here, you can go on to scenario number 2, where you say to yourself, I think the guy that I would get at 41 is around the same talent that I would get at pick 50-something, early 60s, whatever. And if there's a guy that you could sort of say, hey, maybe we can go ahead and pick him later and still get picks in return, I wouldn't mind the Bears doing so. So if I look at this situation right here and I say, hey, Baltimore Ravens, we'll trade up back to pick 59 and give us pick 91 here, or give us, pick 39, 91, and give us pick 136. Now, all of a sudden, the problem that you faced earlier with giving away pick 72 and having all those picks in between with no picks at all, now you've added 2 picks here. Now, obviously, this is a little bit more wishful thinking. We don't know who the Baltimore Ravens would select, but I'm just kind of giving you guys a baseline of what the Bears could do in this scenario. It'd be very difficult to predict which one of these high-end players from the first round would fall to the second. I don't think Walter Nolan, Kenneth Grant, and James Pierce Jr. will be there. Could they be there? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, crazier things have happened in the NFL, but I don't think that's going to happen. And if Ryan Poles truly values having those middle round draft picks, totally fine with me. If he wants to trade back here and trade back, 18 spots in the second round, still have a second round pick up a third round and fourth round pick. Now, it could just be a third round pick here. Don't know how trade negotiations go. It's going to depend on the player. It's going to depend how far you go back in the draft. But let's just say, based off this website, this is what they think is a fair trade. Totally fine with me. You make this trade, you watch players go by, and you think to yourself, you know what? The guys that were drafted in that same pick, I think are still pretty much available here at pick 59. Now you look at guys like Carson Schweitzinger, who is a very good linebacker. Honestly, you could even make a case that he's the best linebacker in this draft, even ahead of Jahad Campbell. I don't think so, but I wouldn't be mad if you said that. You could look at guys like Mason Taylor if you desperately want a tight end too. I don't think the Bears go that direction. I think here you sort of go defensive tackle. I think you want to sort of shore up that defensive line. Now that you spent so much money on the defensive tackle spot, where you got Grady Jarrett in there. Obviously, you spend money on Deo Odeyingbo, but he plays defensive tackle as well, so you can sort of say he's your fourth defensive tackle there. Now, in this draft, you got your edge rusher. Maybe you want to go another defensive tackle. Who knows? Maybe you want to have a package where you have Montez Sweat and you have Deo Odeyingbo on the outside. and you want to have Javon Dexter in the middle. And now maybe you don't see a position for Grady Jarrett or Andrew Billings, but you might see someone in a pass rush specialist like an Omar Norman Lott, who I am a huge fan of his game. Him and James Pierce Jr., I am huge fans of. I think Tennessee did a really good job developing these guys at Tennessee. I think that would be the pick for me. Realistically, like I said, there are going to be guys that this sort of draft is going to be showing that will be available. And it's not to say that they can't be available and there's zero chance they won't be. But I think that for me personally, I want to keep it as realistic as possible because I could have this draft be Ashton Genty over here and then Kenneth Grant and James Pierce Jr. here. And it could be an absolute W, but that has like a less than 1% chance of happening. So I want to keep this realistic. And I think in this scenario here, I think you could probably make the case for safety or offensive line. I do like Jared Wilson here. I don't think he falls to pick 91, but he could play like that center position. Maybe you can even kick him out to guard if you want to draft Dylan Fairchild here. I wouldn't mind that as well. Seth McLaughlin, same thing with him. I think the injuries kind of set him back, but I think for sure he could be drafted by then. Here, I think in this case, if you have a chance to get a guy that can either play significant downs or be in packages more often than another player like on the offensive line who may not see the field at all because there may not be any injuries, I would take it. And a guy like Kevin Winston Jr., without his Achilles injury, probably goes in the second round, early second round, most likely. But obviously the injuries, every year they scare somebody. I would not be surprised if Kevin Winston Jr. is here at pick 91. And this is kind of sort of reminding me of that Eddie Jackson situation back in 2017, a guy that had a ton of upside and teams were scared because of his leg injury that he suffered. And the rest was history. He turned out to be a really good safety. Fell out pretty fast, unfortunately, but you get what I mean. He was really good for a decent amount of time. Looking at here now, you're at pick 136. Now you've solved the problem. Now you look how it's turning out. You got Ashton Genty at 6. You already now have your third round pick again if you so choose to do so. Because like I said, at pick 39, most likely or more likely, somebody good is going to fall to that spot because you're only 7 spots into the second round. And then you have your 9th spot in the second round at pick 41. You can trade back. Or you can just take a really good player there that also falls. You know, if it's anything like last year where 2 first-round talents fall out, you can go ahead and pick him. And all of a sudden, you're not too angry. This situation is not like that. I'm going sort of the more realistic route here. And we're going to go ahead and look at probably offensive line here. I would say I am a huge fan, and I think I've said this already, Dylan Fairchild and Seth McLaughlin and Jackson Slater. Jackson Slater, actually, I am a big fan of as well. I think in this situation, I think you would want a guard only because I feel like for the interior offensive line, you want to make sure that is secure. I don't think the Bears really go offensive tackle. We look at tackle here. Emory Jones, he's solid. I don't think we spend another third round pick or another, well, I guess a mid-round pick. I don't think we go ahead and try to get another offensive tackle there unless he's going to play right tackle. But if you're talking about drafting a guy here at pick 136 to replace Karan Amagaji, who is already a known project, I just don't think that's going to happen. So I think for this pick right here, I think I go Dylan Fairchild. I wouldn't be mad at anybody picking Seth McLaughlin. Now, obviously, at this pick here, you could literally go Seth McLaughlin if you wanted to. If you wanted your backup center, there you go, man. You could go tight end. Well, in this case, all the tight ends are pretty much gone. You could take a guy like Luke Lackey. He's one of my favorite prospects in this draft. I think Luke Lackey is super underrated. I don't understand why he's being rated as like a 6th, 7th round pick. I think his run blocking is probably terrible, but as a tight end too, I don't think that'd be too much of an issue. But if I have to go through like sort of the list here, you got Tez Johnson. I don't think he falls that far. I know he had a terrible testing and he's really tiny, really small. He's more like he's like a smaller Devontae Smith, but I do think he's a really good route runner. I don't think the Bears go and spend another pick on a Tez Johnson or on a wide receiver. Could it happen? I wouldn't be surprised. Not totally surprised, but I just don't really see it happening. Linebacker, you could go a Barrett Carter. You can go Kobe King or Teddy Buchanan. I think the Bears, so my gut tells me that the Bears are comfortable with Noah Sewell as the linebacker number 3. And if we really need to go ahead and get another linebacker, a vet might be an option to sign in free agency, like a vet minimum or whatever, or you go ahead and address that next year. We don't know. There's so many unknowns. I don't think linebacker number 3 is really a spot that you go for at this point. If you're going to do that, you probably do that at pick 59 or 91 in this scenario. But I don't think they're better or bigger priorities over defensive line and safety. Guys that you know with like Jaquan Brisker, who's suffered many concussions, suffers one more and he's probably done with his career, unfortunately. Kevin Byard, he's getting up there in age. It's maybe his last year before he's gone from the team. We don't know. So I think in this case here, you can go a few other options. You could go backup center here. And just in case you run into the issue last year of injuries, like we had last year, so many injuries on the offensive line. I wouldn't mind this. Give me Seth McLaughlin. I think you go backup center, you go backup guard, and now you really filled out the trenches throughout the offseason. If we think about the additions from this right here, Willie Lampkin would be such a nice pick too. I didn't even think about that. Willie Lampkin would be such a nice pick too. I would actually reach about 148 for him. Does he even make it? I just want to see this real quick. He would. Oh my God. We could honestly do that as well. But getting back to my main point, I kind of forgot my main point actually, but Willie Lampkin would be a great pick as well. I wouldn't be too surprised. Oh yeah, I was going to go into the trenches basically. You've got Nick Scorton here. You've got Omar Norman Lott. You got Dylan Fairchild and Seth McLaughlin. You got Joe Tooney. You got Drew Dahlman. You got Jonah Jackson. You got Deo Odeyingbo. You got Grady Jarrett in there. I mean, you've got such an amazing set of trenches in this draft and in free agency. Keep in mind, guys, we're not going to be the Eagles. We're not going to be the Lions. We're not going to have their offensive lines and defensive lines in one offseason. It's just not going to happen. We were so bad last year. We could be top half of the league, like between top 10 and top 16, sure. But I don't think that we're going to be all of a sudden a top 5 offensive line, top 5 defensive line. That's going to take some time here. So I think that's sort of the expectation that we need to kind of, hold ourselves to, just sort of be like, you know what, let's just build what we need to build slowly but surely. We will get there. Remember, the picks that really matter here, Ashton Jeanty to explode your offense, Nick Scorton to be a really solid rotational piece, and maybe even at some point your starting defensive end, Omar Norman Lott to be your pass rushing specialist, your guy that you can sort of rotate in and out. You can even put him at defensive end too in some packages as well if you wanted to. Let's see what Dennis Allen would cook up with this here. You got Kevin Winston Jr., who could maybe be your replacement for either Jaquan Brisker or Kevin Byard here. And then you got your backup lineman. Now going on to pick 233, 7th round pick. Gonna be honest with you guys, I don't think Luke Lackey is gonna make it there. And I don't even know if the Bears really have interest in this guy. This is just me personally, having a personal interest in a guy like Luke Lackey. I would still do it. I mean, you never know. They never, the chips don't always fall the way the Bears want to. And, I don't think the Bears have met with every single player they've drafted beforehand. So I'm going to take Luke Lackey here. I know I probably missed out on Willie. No, I didn't. Willie Lampkin would be great here. Willie Lampkin would be amazing. Ja Joyner is another guy that I'm high on as well. Ja Joyner, a really good developmental guy. I don't expect him to be like a, freaking Max Crosby or Micah Parsons or anything like that. But just to be, a solid rotational piece with some sort of upside, with some sort of potential in there, I wouldn't mind it. Could you go Willie Lampkin? Absolutely. And I wouldn't mind it. You got Austin Booker, obviously, as your defensive end number, 4 or 5 at this point. Maybe you don't go defensive end again here. Maybe Dennis Allen doesn't like the way he's built or whatever the case may be. I'm a huge fan of Willie Lampkin. I've been on the train of Willie Lampkin way before anybody else, so at least I like to pride myself in thinking so. I'm taking Willie Lampkin. I'm taking sort of your left guard, right guard, and your center. And this is sort of how I would expect the Bears to go about this sort of draft. Now, obviously, it is still it's statistically unlikely that the Bears are going to trade up and take, trade up in general, or attempt to trade up, but 2, that Las Vegas even passes up on that. But I would understand it in the sense of the Raiders saying to themselves, we're not a running back away just yet. We can address that in later rounds, but we have a hole at right tackle, so we could take Armand Membu. we have a hole at cornerback, so you could take Will Johnson. You have a hole at wide receivers, so you can take Luther Burden or Tedoroa McMillan. You could draft Shador Sanders and have him sit behind Geno Smith because Geno Smith is getting old. You could go Will Campbell if he falls. Maybe put him at right tackle. Whatever you want. I don't think that running back is going to be the move here. And so people say, well, if the Raiders wouldn't take Ashton Jeanty, why would the Bears trade up for it? And the very simple answer is that we are in much different positions of rosters. Our roster currently is much better than the Raiders, and we are in a much better position to draft a running back this high than the Raiders are currently. And I think they can I think it sort of relies on them coming to that understanding and saying, hey, Chicago would probably, be beneficial. Ashton Jeanty would be beneficial for Chicago more so than it would be for Las Vegas. And if we're not going to take him, we might as well not stay put. We'll take McMillan or Will Johnson at pick 10 and collect draft capital. And in this case, like I said, also take DeAndre Swift and sort of have at least some answer at running back. And they can go ahead and draft another running back as well. And then you have DeAndre Swift in a second round pick at running back. And, if you really want a running back that much, I could see that happening for the Raiders, and I've talked to a few Raiders fans too who are actually in agreement with this selection, who also believe that the Raiders are not in a position yet to draft a running back, especially at pick number 6. So obviously this Baltimore trade, I'm not really specifically saying Baltimore themselves would trade up. I'm just saying anybody in general in the second round, I would say between picks 50 and 60 that we could trade back from, picking up another third round or fourth round pick. So that way you're not waiting 107 spots from pick 41 to pick 148. So this is how I think this would happen. Ashton Jeanty at pick 6, Nick Scorton at pick 39, trading back to 59, getting Omar Norman Lott, 91, get Kevin Winston Jr. out of Penn State, Dylan Fairchild, Zach McLaughlin, Luke Lackey, I couldn't say his name for a second, and Willie Lampkin. This would be an absolute W of a draft. All of these guys have potential in my eyes. Let me know what you guys think, man. Do you agree with this? Do you think the Bears should trade up? Do you think we should stay put or trade back? This is going to be a really fun draft. Whatever the case may be, I would encourage this for all Bears fans. Trust the process. I know some of us want Ashton Jeanty. I know some of us want defensive line, offensive line. I know there's some players, like me personally, I'm not a big fan of Kelvin Banks or Michael Williams or Shamar Stewart. Am I going to crash out one of those picks? Maybe. But at the end of the day, we need to come to a conclusion that we are not coaches. We are not general managers. We are not NFL scouts for the most part. People who are not watching my video are not any of those things. So we need to trust that the guys that we brought in, the guys that we wanted Ryan Poles to bring in, can get the job done no matter who they draft, and that they did their due diligence in researching the players that they want. They got the guys that they want, and they can turn them into good players that could be beneficial for our team. I am going to be on board with anything the Bears select. Anything. Even if I might not show it at first, as the season progresses, I would love for Bears fans to just trust the process no matter what. So that is sort of my PSA to all Bears fans, just ending off this video. But let me know what you guys think about this draft. Bear down, I'm out.